You think your baby just got startled. They probably did not. They are on the rug, kicking hard, arms flashing, fussing like their whole body is trying to escape the moment. And then one familiar voice begins speaking from across the room. Instantly, the movement cuts out. The legs stop. The hands pause mid-wave. The face goes quiet. For a second, it feels almost eerie, like the sound reached deeper than the room. The obvious explanation comes fast. That voice was louder, sharper, or simply interrupted the crying. That sounds reasonable. It is also too small. Because when a very young baby suddenly stops moving for one familiar voice, you may be watching more than surprise. You may be watching a developing nervous system find a signal it already knows how to follow. That is not random. What makes this moment feel so uncanny is how specific it is. Not every sound does it. A cabinet shuts, and the baby startles. A phone buzzes, and nothing changes. Someone else talks, and the fussing keeps climbing. But one familiar voice begins, and the whole body seems to gather itself around the sound. Parents notice that immediately, and once they notice it, they usually tell themselves one of two stories. Either the baby simply likes that voice, or the baby has already learned that voice means rescue is coming. Both explanations feel harmless. Neither one goes deep enough. This is not just hearing, it is orienting. To understand why the body can go so still, you have to step into the sensory world of a baby in the first 3 months. At this age, almost everything is expensive. Vision is still blurry and effortful. Arousal rises quickly. Hunger, discomfort, light, touch, motion, and sound all compete at once. That is one reason young babies so often look physically busy. They kick, squirm, fling, tense, release, wave, fuss, and startle because regulation is still rough and unfinished. So when all of that suddenly stops for a voice, the stillness matters. It tells you the signal entering the system is not landing like ordinary background noise. Stillness can be attention. Long before birth, the baby is already living inside rhythm. By late pregnancy, the auditory system is active enough that repeated sound patterns matter, but the voice does not arrive in the womb the way it arrives in a room. It reaches the fetus, filtered through the mother's body, softened by tissue, carried through fluid, blended with heartbeat, breath, and motion. The sharp edges are reduced. The rhythm remains. What the baby gets again and again is not language in the adult sense. It is contour, cadence, repetition, a voice as vibration and pattern. They did not just hear that voice. They grew around its rhythm. That is why early auditory preference studies were so striking. Researchers wanted to know whether newborns responded to human speech in a general way, or whether a more familiar voice pattern already held special weight. So they used simple pacifier-based designs that let infants alter what they heard through changes in sucking. An adult might expect a newborn to respond almost the same way to any soothing voice, but that is not what those studies suggested. Very young infants could shift their behavior to hear the more familiar voice pattern. They worked for it. Not because they understood words, because one acoustic pattern was already more known than the rest. They are not just hearing sound, they are selecting familiarity. That finding changes the whole opening scene. The voice that stills your baby is not simply entering the ear as one more stimulus. It is arriving as something the nervous system has had more chances to register, predict, and organize around. And prediction matters enormously at this age. The world is full of input. A baby cannot sort cleanly yet. A familiar voice can be one of the few signals. That does not have to be solved completely from scratch. Every time it appears, a voice can already be a pattern. Now return to the moment on the rug. The baby is fussing, arching, kicking, losing coherence. Then the voice begins. Parents often assume the body goes still because the baby has been startled into silence. Sometimes sudden quiet really is a startle, but the moment you are describing usually has a different texture. It is less like shock and more like a full body orienting response. In early development, orienting happens when the system detects something especially salient and shifts resources toward it. Competing movement drops. Attention narrows. The body spends less energy elsewhere, so the signal can come through more clearly. The body goes quiet, so the signal can come through. This is the part most parents never hear. A very young baby cannot process everything at once. An adult can listen to a voice, keep moving, ignore background noise, and hold a thought all at the same time without noticing the effort. A young infant cannot. When something especially usable enters the environment, other activity may temporarily fall away, not because the baby is empty, because the baby is busy. The stillness is not the absence of processing, it is the cost of it. A small system with limited capacity often has to narrow itself before it can hold anything clearly. What looks passive may be organized effort, and there are signs of that shift in the body. Not just in the ears. In research on infant orienting, focused attention is often linked with physiological change, including brief slowing of heart rate. Adults sometimes imagine attention as energetic and outward. Early attention often looks quieter than that. It can look like pausing, gathering, holding. The body may do less because the system is reallocating itself. The baby on the rug is not necessarily being distracted out of distress. The baby may be moving from diffuse arousal to focused listening. Attention can look like silence. That is why not all sound lands the same. A sudden noise can flood the system. A familiar voice can gather it. One interrupts. One organizes. One adds more chaos. One gives the nervous system a structure it can actually use. That difference is enormous. It means the original freeze is not a lucky accident. It is a clue about which signals the baby can already follow without being overwhelmed by them. Not all sound lands the same, and this is where the emotional meaning starts to change for the parent, because hidden inside this moment is a private question people rarely say out loud. Why that voice? Why not mine? Or if it is my voice, what exactly is happening when the whole body goes quiet like that? The answer is not that you are magically controlling the baby, and it is not that the baby is decoding your words. It is that your rhythm, pacing, contour, and repetition across ordinary days and nights may be giving the nervous system a pattern it can use to move from disorganization toward coherence. You are not just soothing, you are offering a pattern the body can trust. That matters because early regulation is not self-contained. In the first months, babies do not calm themselves the way older children eventually can. Their systems borrow. They borrow rhythm. They borrow timing. They borrow steadiness. A familiar voice can become part of that borrowed regulation, not because it fixes everything instantly, but because it gives the body something more predictable than the storm it is currently inside. What calms them may first be what they can predict. This is also why the prenatal piece matters so much. If you explain the moment only as the baby knows that voice, it sounds like a cute social fact. But the deeper truth is more embodied than that. The baby did not first meet that voice as information. They met it as repeated living vibration. Inside a body, that was already their environment. By the time they hear it from across the room after birth, it may already carry the oldest rhythm. Their nervous system has had the chance to know, not in a poetic sense only, in a sensory one. Some signals feel familiar before they feel meaningful. That is the deeper reframe. The baby is not only reacting to a person. The baby may be finding one of the few human signals that already arrives with history, contour, and predictability. And when a signal like that enters a disorganized moment, the body may do what immature systems often do when they find something usable. It narrows, it pauses, it listens, it borrows stability from pattern before it could ever understand comfort in words. They are not just listening. They are borrowing regulation on its own. A baby going still for a familiar voice usually does not mean anything is wrong. Many babies in the first months show strong orientation to certain voices, especially when those voices are repeated, rhythmic, and emotionally familiar. Every child develops on their own timeline. But if a baby rarely seems to orient to voices at all, shows little response to close social input across many situations, or seems persistently hard to engage with across both faces and voices, it may be worth raising with a pediatric professional. Not because one missed moment is alarming, but because patterns matter more than isolated scenes. The deeper truth here is bigger than "they like that voice." A very young baby is not only hearing a person, they are beginning to learn what kind of signal the world can be. Some sounds arrive as noise, some arrive as pattern, some do not just pass through the room, they change the body. That is one of the earliest openings of social life, long before language, long before memory in the adult sense, long before any child could explain what comfort means. This is how regulation begins. This is how safety starts to get read. This is how social meaning begins to take shape. So the next time your baby is waving, fussing, or kicking, and then suddenly goes quiet, when one familiar voice starts speaking nearby, do not read the old story too quickly. Do not reduce it to a lucky distraction or a strange little reflex. Watch the hands pause. Watch the body gather. Watch the silence deepen as listening takes over. Your baby is not just freezing because someone made a sound. Your baby may be finding in that one recognizable voice a pattern the nervous system can finally organize around. This is not a strange little habit. This is development happening in real time. They are not just going quiet. They are learning what a human presence can sound like. When it begins to feel predictable enough for the body to trust,